Outlay Committee, and today is the 24th of October. The minutes from the 3rd and the 15th,
Are not done.
okay, they're not available yet. That's fine. We have capital plan submissions, and is everything submitted? That's the question.
I just realized I left something downstairs. No, I did receive, I had a meeting yesterday with cable. I'm trying to capture everybody that spends money, and I tell them that if it's over 50,000, you guys are supposed to be aware of it. So they changed, the state changed the way they do the cable funding, so now we have to have specific appropriations at town meeting if we're gonna spend any money on cable. So Jamie Goodwin has put together a capital budget, and she has that, and I have that material, and I'll distribute it. The first year, there's nothing over 50,000, so there wouldn't be any votes taken.
Does that come out of the PEG cable fund? So it's not going to affect our
It's
discussion
not gonna
of free
affect the
cash,
bottom
okay.
line, and just for Angelo, there's no taxpayer dollars included in
Right.
this. It's if you have a cable subscription, then you're contributing to it. But it's similar to what I did with golf, where golf basically pays for itself, but golf is in there, so I wanted to get cable too, just so it's a more comprehensive review.
But we also collect revenues for cable.
Yes.
How much do we collect revenues?
Well, there's two things. One, it's about $150,000 we get from the cable money that we get, that we use to operate the department. And then the appropriation for the capital is about $500,000 that's been allocated to us, and then it gets expended from that.
So we do offset,
Yeah, you may wanna, just so,
on an annual basis, we budget for an offset of the operating expenses for the cable, Channel 18, which this fiscal year is $168,000. We don't have yet a breakdown of any capital that is supported through the PEG access.
she just submitted it to me
revenue.
yesterday, so
Okay.
I'll get it to
So,
you.
but right now, that fund has over $1 million in it,
Okay.
the PEG access fund.
And that's for capital improvements to the operation.
Does this have anything to do with, does Open Cape in that?
No, Open Cape is a separate company.
Oh, I understand that, but do they pay us any revenue for coming through?
No.
Do you want to sit up here? Would that be easier for you?
There's a wicked glare in front of Angelo. I can't figure out that there's a blind.
It's coming through one of the slats,
No, there's a blind
'cause I'm-
missing.
Coming through, wait 10 minutes. Oh, my.
I know. There's a blind missing, Angelo.
Be careful they don't fall down.
Yeah, no, don't worry about it. Thank you.
Okay. We can tighten up the, if, we can move over,
Nope, that helped. Thank you. He fixed it.
okay.
That's what I do.
He's a fix-it man.
Keep them on the committee.
We're on TV, and I'd like to get this through, please.
Yes.
Okay? The cable revenues are, okay, so you have one submission for a cable expense, but this year supposedly it's under 50, so we wouldn't be voting on it anyway.
Correct.
Okay. There are any other submissions that are not captured?
I believe everything that I distributed in this 23rd one is now comprehensive, and everything is in there.
Okay. The second thing is this is sort of our, you have a question?
Well, I have a bunch of small questions. I don't know how you want to go through them department by department or,
Well, let me finish. and
okay,
I-
sorry.
So this captures all the submissions. One thing that maybe, it was confusing to me, is that we voted for everything. So we have consensus on everything. It doesn't reflect on this report the votes. The way it's reflected that we did vote positively on it is in the column COC rec is what we voted for. So I'd like to go, and that is basically view of COC votes and funding. So what we'll do is, Chris has gone through our recommendations, in the dollars, and you'll see now in the funding source, Chris has updated the request and say that coming from that. Now, you had a question.
No,
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I thought so.
I don't believe we voted on any wastewater.
I think we needed to,
If you look at your column, there was no funding that you guys recommended on.
Right.
So anything that you did not vote, I did not put in the column. So only things that received affirmative votes made it into your column.
okay.
The other thing that, I didn't attend the meeting, but on cemetery, I didn't see anything in the, I think she provided me with the minutes on the cemetery, and I don't think you voted any of the cemetery.
Yes, they did.
Yep.
If I might, yes, they did. The one that they did not vote on was the master plan. You guys held that because you wanted more information. Those were the one set of minutes I was able to complete.
So, and Pine Grove in our column should be 75,000.
Yep.
And Island Pond Arboretum implementation or construction.
Yeah, the 43,000 is the study, the 100,000 is construction. I put the words in there that weren't in there before. Both of those would only go if the grant gets approved.
And we approved the 100, but not the 43.
Right,
You approved the 100, not
That's
the
kinda-
43.
yeah.
That's
We gotta
kinda-
approve the study before you
Before
do
we-
the
I know, but
construction.
that's how you voted it.
That's right.
Okay,
We
let's relook at that, because it doesn't make sense. We can't approve the construction if we don't approve the plan or the study. And it all has to do with a grant. If there is no grant,
Then it doesn't go.
then it
Doesn't
doesn't
go.
go.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's how your vote was.
Okay, so why don't we take a vote and clear up that? Can I depend on you?
Yeah, I thought we already, that's what I thought we voted. I thought we said,
Let's do it again.
Yeah, she said we didn't do it on the study, so.
It doesn't come out in the minutes, so let's show it in the minutes
Okay.
today.
I'll make a motion that we approve the 43,000 as long as it's a grant only
for the-
Second.
For the study.
For the study.
for the study.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's for the 43. Do I hear anything else? I need another motion.
what?
That's for the 43. Now there's the 100.
You already voted
You
that.
voted
That's
for
it?
it.
Did that.
You already
That's
did
it?
vote that.
Okay, it's not in the column. Okay. So that 100 goes in the column as voted.
Yep.
And now the 43 goes in. And it all depends on, and that's where the notes go. I guess any place there's a grant involved?
I actually do have the total. I have to figure out, I know Angelo had brought this point out, I might get rid of the colors, so that way it's obvious that it's not taxpayer money, it's gonna be a grant.
Okay.
I may try to color code it,
Well,
I'll see.
in terms of since our vote really doesn't appear only in our notes and not on this document, under notes, wherever there's a grant or CPC, we vote in favor, if there's a,
Do you want me to put them in this column here under notes,
could.
what your vote was?
Yeah,
If
we
it was
had 'em.
unanimous, and then I'll put the funding source next to it too?
no, you don't have to do that.
Oh, yeah.
Finance, FinCom needs to do that to get the article in.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is positive, something like positive vote if grant, positive
Yep.
vote if CPC.
Yep.
I mean, that's what we're really voting. Correct?
I'll make a notation that where you have a request, and then you concur with the funding source that's been identified.
Great,
Why don't we do that?
great. Okay, any other questions before we begin department by department? We're good? That's all we have to do today. I mean, that's where it goes, so. Under administration,
There's nothing. I
Nothing there.
moved the sidewalk, unfortunately, out to 2022, but
Yeah,
okay, so, nothing in 21?
nothing in 21.
nothing.
All right, so we showed that, okay.
Under the Affordable Housing Trust, you have
Right.
Deacon's Folly that,
We voted no for.
you specifically voted no.
We voted no.
Yeah, Yeah, and that's why,
And that should show rather
see,
than a
that's,
dash.
that's,
I know.
that's what I was,
Yeah, actually, I think I can put wording in not voted, and then that won't screw up my
Well, is it not voted or not supported?
Not supported.
not supported.
well,
Vote, it was negative vote.
It was a negative vote.
I didn't watch it, so I don't know what happened.
can, from a
I know it
terminology,
was a negative vote.
from a terminology point. If it's a negative vote on our part, would it be equal to that from procedure? Because
That may
normally,
make sense for.
when FinCom votes a no, and it's in an article, it's indefinitely postponed. That's their no.
IPP.
Can I ask a question? Where it's a CPC article, you generally
Oh, defer to CPC.
defer to CPC.
Well, and
Right, because we're
also-
not,
So,
no,
I
wait.
just want to make sure I get the minutes right.
we didn't support it.
Right, but usually doesn't it go to an IPP if somebody can't make a positive motion?
Correct.
And in this case, there was one vote for it, somebody did make a positive motion, so I don't think it is an IPP, I think it was voted down, like at town meeting, when they take a vote and it comes
Well,
out,
we want it to reflect no.
Yeah.
I don't care how that,
Maybe I'll put it in the notes that it was a 1-4 vote, or I don't recall what the vote
I
was on that.
didn't do the minutes, so I don't
okay,
know.
let's,
I'll have to look at my note, I don't know.
it was
if Carol-
1-4-1,
Was it 4-1?
1-4-1?
1-4-1.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
answers that. Okay, so the cemetery we voted on already.
Mhm.
Nothing from the community center.
Mhm.
Can we put 0 or something, because it almost looks like we didn't finish.
Yeah, I'll see if I can put 0 in. When I put, they have all zeros. That's just the way Excel reports it. It
Yeah, I
doesn't-
just,
I'll
it's
see
not
if I
like,
can
well,
have it show the zeros.
it's
Yeah.
fine, if there's nothing in 21, then there's gonna be nothing in the columns to the left.
Right.
I mean, that's the logic here. Okay, engineering.
Conservation,
Well, there's
Conservation
nothing,
doesn't have any.
there's nothing there.
okay.
Engineering, you're recommending 50, we voted in 100.
Right.
So you're gonna drop?
And that would come out of the operating budget. I think we have in the operating budget 40,000 that we have for this current year for design work related to MS4. So I thought that we could maybe use that towards doing some work on what these are, the individual, I want to say they're like a centrifugal thing on each of the manholes. So I think they're about $5,000 each. So as long as we did some kind of interval of 10, we should be okay to do some.
Okay, so you're,
I
vote
recommended
was-
50 because I think the budget was 40,000 for
Okay.
that in his operating.
so we
budget.
voted 100, that's fine.
So should we correct that vote now?
We approved I mean, this, now you're getting into, we approved the request of 100.
Yep.
So we approved the 100. You went back to the funding source and you said,
Just because of availability of funds, I thought 50 is more reasonable.
so,
Doesn't it make sense for us to change that to 50, so we're balanced?
Right.
first year?
And it's one less piece of confusion that'll come along.
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine. I mean, we will have, if you don't do that, and there's nothing wrong with it, we will have what we have approved going over everything versus the adjustments the town administrator makes. And there have been years where we're different. He may be over and we're under, and we may be over, he's under. So this just shows that the project sold at 100,000 and we bought the idea. We voted yes. Turn it over to where the funding come from, and 50 is available. So if we voted less and he came out more, then we got a problem. But we voted a higher number, he came in less. I don't see voting again.
Well, I know it's not gonna change anything, it's just what it does at town meeting, because what people will see.
Well, it gives him more credibility. That's what it does.
Yeah,
But I don't, okay, let's
Whatever.
revote.
I move to reconsider the vote to approve 100,000 for FY '21 for the MS4 stormwater work.
It's not 100, it's 50 now.
So I
To
moved
go
to,
from the, I
I'm-
think the request is to go from 100 down to 50.
right, but I thought we had to reconsider the vote first.
Yeah.
And then we'll make the motion to move
I
it.
believe, yeah.
So my motion was to reconsider.
100,000.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Who seconded? Thank you.
Angela. Move to approve stormwater expenses for FY '21 in the amount of 50,000.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Now we're
I need to catch up. Hold on a second.
sure.
I think it was 5.
5-0 on both.
That's
The
probably
reconsideration of
better.
100 and then the favorable vote for 50.
You gotta take 50 out.
So
at
that
the
will
end.
change from 100 to 50.
I will make that adjustment.
Thank you.
Good. And the crossing lights, it's under 50. We don't have to vote. And also change the engineering subtotal to 50.
Yep. That will automatically, once I do it.
Yeah, you say that now. Okay, so now we're at the engineering, and this is where the departments
Facility maintenance.
are under facility. What I'm saying is there's facility maintenance, which is under Department of Public Works, takes into consideration expenses or costs of other departments.
Townwide.
Yeah, townwide. The first one was for, or is for Brooks Library, and we voted in favor of 148,500. We didn't have to vote for ADA compliance improvements. That's,
Question on that one. I thought Griffin said that in terms of the next two lines, the ADA compliance, I thought he said that if he got the $350,000 grant, then he would not need either the 11,605 nor the 75,235.
That's what
Correct.
he said.
So,
I was trying to find a way to write all that,
right.
and I didn't think of a good way to do it.
Well, I mean,
So,
if,
I need
so
to-
are you saying that if he doesn't get the grant, you'd be asking,
No, we would delay, we would move things back. We wouldn't ask
right,
for
so
any-
why have the line there at all? That's what I don't understand.
Maybe what I can do is move the 11.6 and the 75, move those back, and then just say that if we get the grant, we'll do the work.
move my head,
What?
moving my head.
Yeah.
I just dropped the line altogether.
So it's
Planning-
only a grant only.
Well, sometimes, like
Yeah.
on the fire, sometimes we have grants and we have matching funds, so I'd like to just do two lines, it's the same
Okay.
project.
All right.
Why don't we move it forward a year? There is no vote.
It's not our vote anyway, right?
I'll move those back, the 11.6 and the 75,
How about
to
the
22 and 23.
How about the 350? Keep that there?
And the 350 stays, but it's contingent upon the grant.
Okay. You buy that?
Yep.
Okay, so the 11 and the 75 move out 2 years.
Now, this is where I started to run out of money,
Well,
so
So,
we didn't get very far, did we?
I did have a conversation with Lincoln on the transfer station scale decking.
Yeah,
So he said he needed that.
okay.
The cultural center generator, which, when Sean did the presentation, he, the generator from Station 2,
Yeah,
because Station 2 is getting, Fire Station 2 is getting a new generator, and he's
Right.
gonna try to deploy that at the cultural center.
right.
So it won't be, I'm sure there'll be some money involved, but it won't be as much.
so this 70,000 will not be in
So
play?
the 70,000's not gonna be,
70,
I can say redeploy Station 2 generator in the notes.
and you say the boiler is not going to be replaced?
The generator,
Generator.
Okay, so we voted for,
the 70,000,
you're saying there's not enough money to do it?
correct.
Okay.
So Should we reconsider that one and eliminate it?
If we're gonna move it over, I mean, are you putting it elsewhere, or is he moving it elsewhere?
Why don't I move it back, and maybe easier just to put
Forward?
it back to, forward,
Okay.
and then that may disappear.
That'll help the number.
That will help the number too, yeah.
So, but we voted it in 21.
So why don't
did.
you, let's reconsider.
Move to reconsider, vote to approve the cultural center generator in the amount of $70,000 for FY '21.
All those in favor?
Second.
Wait,
Aye.
who seconded?
Second.
Aye.
Somebody second it.
Angelo.
Angelo.
Yeah.
Move to, well, we're moving it,
To 22 with the idea.
just,
Make a recommendation.
Make a recommendation.
move the projected expense of $70,000 for the cultural center generator to FY '22.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I have a question.
Okay. Let's, first.
I'm sorry.
Okay, what's your question?
I'm concerned about the ability to spend money on the cultural center, period. Do we have from our council and/or the state, the fact that that is a real place, the cultural center, and we can spend money on it? Because we've never had it approved at town, as far as I know. The selectmen decided to spend a couple $100,000 this year, a couple $100,000 next year, and if you look at everything carefully, it's a ton of a couple $100,000 that is being spent on this thing, and I don't think the town ever voted it.
Yeah, just through you, Mr. Chairman, just on that, that's not really accurate. So I think it's important to be at least accurate. The decision that had to be made almost 6 years ago now, at this point, was the town gonna spend $200,000 to fund it as in our insurance budget, to fund it as a vacant building? And the selectmen, which I think you were on at the time, Angela, you may have voted against it in fairness, but the decision was made to provide a $125,000 subsidy to utilize the building. In year 2, which would probably be FY '15, a plan was submitted to the Board of Selectmen to convert it from its use as, well, the housing effort failed, so then it converted from a housing effort to the cultural center. And for the last 6 budgets, it's been subsidized at $125,000 to offset the heating and electric cost of that facility. About 3 years ago, I think, we created, or 2 years ago, we created the revolving account for the cultural center that then pays for the custodial support and the staffing of the facility. And both of those items, the subsidy payment has been on every warrant since I've been here, and the revolving account was only, maybe it was 2 years ago, I don't remember if it was 2 or 3 years ago that we created a revolving account, but a revolving account was created to pay the part-time salaries.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I mean, everything you said was accurate, except that I'm not sure if it was crystal clear to the voters that when they started the revolving fund and started actually taking in revenues and having events there, that we were going to continue the 125 subsidy. I'm not saying we were or we weren't. I'm just saying I'm not sure if there was ever a really crystal clear discussion about that. And I do notice that you're lowering the subsidy and funding it from free cash, which causes a big problem. And I would question the funding of a subsidy. If it's, you just said it's gonna be a continuing operation, so that kind of goes in the face of free cash methodology anyway.
Yep.
But the other thing I would ask Carol would be, from those 125s, 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 there should be some balance in different articles from all of those different 125. I don't believe we spent 125 times 7 all those years on just heating. and a few other things, the 20,000 for the septic or whatever, in the last 7 years.
Actually, it's funny you say that. I happened to be down at DPW today, and Sean Libby had a breakdown, and it ranged from about 80,000 to 112,000, I think, last year for what he has expended on, the septic is expensive. That's a good point. I
Right.
think it's about, it was 44,000, it's gone up to like 48,000. So 44,000 of that is, I'm sorry, half of that, 24,000
yeah.
is being paid out of that article. I funded it from free cash because originally I thought we were just gonna hold the building until something was done, decided to do with it. And the board,
Right.
you know, so it's not the ideal funding source.
Okay, so other years, I mean, I've seen it in articles, I've seen it under the administration department for a couple of years. It was funded by taxpayer funds. I've seen that, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I've seen that funded from just about everything under the sun. I don't think I've ever seen it funded from free cash before, and that bothers me, but that's not.
It has been. To your point, I think we did fund it 1 year out of taxpayer money.
Right. But what is the balance in all those 125 times 6 years with all those?
I'd have to have Carol and Sean work at that, but he said it ranged from about 79, I think was what he had 3 or 4 years ago, up to 112. So to your point, there is
Right, but-
balances
but
left
there
in
was a
there.
couple of years even before Sean was in there when we were just paying for building alive, you know. It wasn't 80,000, but at any rate, without the facts. So my question would be more like Angelo's, which is, I know you expressed an interest that eventually today we might kind of vote on the whole plan. I have a problem voting on the line that includes the boiler, the generator, and 2 lines below that, the window replacements for 200 each, without more definitive information about the cultural center. And I'm really a supporter of the cultural center, but, you know, without the facts of what's going on there, that's a lot of money to spend while we're broke.
Yeah, just the only two comments, I guess, is I know that there's been a request from Carol to provide information about the you know, the expenditures, so there may be a discussion for the selectmen. The second is, you know, I work at the direction of the selectmen. So the selectmen had initially said, we'll do a 2-year trial period to have it be a cultural center, and then they followed up with a 5-year period. So I'm operating under the direction of the Board of Selectmen to keep that building open as a cultural center, utilizing those funds. But the point, it's really a selectmen's discussion, and
Right.
I don't know who asked for the information, if that was, I thought Larry Ballantyne was one that had asked for some of the money of how much it costs to operate that. But they asked Carol, that's why I'm looking at Carol for that.
I had met with a tax group, and they had asked me for an abundance of information. So that information was provided to them. So there's historical information of the past, I think, 3 years of what's the revenue that's come in, what are all the expenses associated between maintenance costs and utilities, so, and then the cost of staffing that center as well, the cultural center. So that's been provided. I'm happy to provide it to you as well. I can send it to you this evening.
Well, let me just make a comment on that. There's particulars that are asked in the world of finance within the town, okay? And that's one prime example of FinCom and this committee. You got the request, we should have been CC'd. And it's unique because we just started this thing where we now have assets that are costing us money. And yes, they have revenue, but I'm positive the revenue doesn't even come close to the expense. And I think we keep on speaking about getting rid of assets, managing the assets. How many times have we looked at the school in West Harwich? You know, do we want to put $20, $30, $40, $80,000 worth of windows? You know, it's constant. And I just, from a policy standpoint, I think we should establish that if anything goes out, that the taxpayer understands, and they should, the committees should know about it too, okay?
I mean, I'm happy to.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope you realize how much information you're coming your way. I just want to
Well, no,
warn you.
I think what we need to know is bottom line. What, if you took the past 7 years, this is the revenue that came in. I don't need to know, from exercise class, from the arts class. I'm not talking, it took in X amount of dollars, and the town cost should be one number. Whether
I
it's-
understand.
Whether it depreciate, I don't think you use depreciation on it.
So,
Right.
if you, I don't know how you want me to filter, because there's a tremendous abundance of requests that I have all the time for financial information. So I don't know if you want me to filter that to decide what you want, or if I just send it all to you.
No, I think we need to think about it after town meeting, how we can better understand the numbers. And if we knew the numbers, and you have them, there should be a way for us to get them. Yes?
I guess part of my point too is, and I have some of that information that I haven't gotten through everything yet, but thank you very much. And I'll look at that section. Need to spend, if we don't know,
We
you
just
know,
did
what the
rules.
ultimate goal of the building is, it's hard to talk about 400,000 for windows, I mean, like you said, you serve at the pleasure, keep the building alive for 2 years. If I was gonna keep the building alive for 5 years, I wouldn't spend 400,000 on windows, nor would you,
Peter?
Can someone comment on the windows? When is it gonna be done?
Well, I think what Sean Libby has, he has Cultural Center generator, which 160,000 in '22, the Cultural Center boiler of 55,000 in '22, and then the Cultural Center window replacement and sash windows that failed. He has, actually, 400,000 in '23 and '24. I think what Sean's kind of thinking is that with a 7-year time horizon, he's looking at doing some of this work, and he anticipates that green communities, this is a building that's a energy pig,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term, and he can actually use green communities money towards these improvements.
Well, the reason I'm asking,
Yeah.
about 8 years ago, when Harwich School Department had that building, they asked me to go look at it. I looked at it. It's a very complicated window system. Windows, one piece goes in, and it covers the windows on the first and second floor.
Okay.
It's a very complicated thing. Now, it's not done that way anymore. So to put in, you have to do a lot more, you're gonna have to close the space, make a smaller space, and then put new energy efficient windows in. It's gonna, I didn't wanna put a price tag on it.
Yeah, I think with.
That's beyond me.
Carol, we're not picking, okay?
You're smart.
We're gonna come out if this request was this year, it would come up at town meeting. And if the interested party got the numbers from you and said, well, the finance director gave us this numbers and we're asked about it, we don't know about it. I think and it's our fault too, we need to know what's happening in terms of the assets. And we repeat this every year, and I don't know who takes charge as a committee of FinCom? Is it us? I don't know, but I think, Sean I know he's gone through the buildings, the assets, and he sort of has a view and comments about the building, but I can tell you that if this is up next year, or the year after, 70, 200, 200, anything to do with community center, and there is no master plan, of this,
We're gonna
the
be
vote's gonna.
Right.
I don't wanna say yes or no, but we really have to consider it hard. It's one of those things that it's a bus tour, but with a subject matter expert with us, somebody who could price it out and let us know this is what it's gonna be, and it's one pot. You know, that's all I'm gonna say. I'm really concerned about, we're approaching $1 million on that building, over $1 million, with generating, I don't know, 40,000, 50,000 a year.
Generates about 140,000, I thought, from revenue.
Well,
Well, to amortize over $1 million, it's gonna take.
Yeah.
For FY19, the actual results of that, the revenue that was generated versus all of the expenses, the insurance for the building and
Yeah, sure.
all the utilities and maintenance folks working there, the loss was about $92,000. Now, that doesn't take into account the $125,000 that's being supported from. This is just actual revenue and actual expenses that are associated with that
So it's
building.
over 200,000 a year.
So $92,000 loss.
But there's a
What was
sunk-
the amount of revenue that came in?
But there's a
I
sunk,
don't recall off the top of my head.
but there's a sunk cost of 125.
Pardon me?
A sunk cost of
So the
125.
125 didn't even play into that.
That's what I said, but it's sunk, it's in.
It's not necessarily in. So you really need a 92 of that 125 to break even, I'll say. So, you know, so they didn't use all of the 125 in FY19.
Okay.
does that, do the expenses include a portion of Carol and Carrie's salary?
The expenses include,
Because it usually doesn't, the way we do
Yeah.
Does not.
expenses for departments. But in reality, she ran the place for a number of years and still continues to help out. And you have a maintenance person who's supposed to run maintenance for the entire town, who spends an awful lot of time there, and his salary should be charged to that.
Why don't we, we're gonna
So-
put you on the calendar
okay,
after Christmas kind of thing, when we sort of go in hibernation till town meeting May.
May.
We start up again, because everything for us literally is done by December. You figure, you know, January, February, March. Probably April or May, we start taking in things that we want to talk about.
Yeah.
So why don't we make that one of our things that we want to talk about? That's our, you know,
I think I should make a comment about why I'm making these comments, because it probably sounds mean. I'm making these comments because of last year's meeting, the attitude of the people in that audience who were worried about what we were spending, and did we know what we were spending and how we were spending it. And I, for one, don't want to be sitting up there again when people are asking, you know, questions, very specific questions that we don't have the answers to.
so can I just comment, please, if you don't mind? So last year, the Finance Committee had that information, and it was provided to them, so that's all I can tell you. But as far as the costs that are being accumulated, I worked with the Facilities Department, Sean directly in the Facilities Department, to gather the correct costs. We had in the initial year of, you know, how do we open the building? What are all the costs that are associated with opening the building? And those were pretty extensive on the facility side. But, so currently, we have a portion of facility costs for the Facility Department to maintain that building. We have custodial costs in there. What does it cost to clean the building? And then we have the staff that are working there. We do not have the community center director's salary or any of her benefits, or that person's benefits, that are associated with these costs. But all the other costs are all front-loaded in there, except for that you had mentioned.
John Libby, I don't
I
think
think-
his salary's not.
He did not allocate any portion of his salary. He allocated 2 folks that work under him and a certain amount of hours a week that they work in that building.
and Carol, you did the right thing. If you looked at what we're speaking about on an annual basis, and either it's an operating expense, okay, most of it is operating expense, and it's expense dollars, and it's current. So FinCom would handle that. It's when you look at the expenses that are gonna be taken out long-term. Capital expenses, your capital expenses are not reflected in your operating expenses. So that's where the thin line between FinCom and us. We're concerned about the long-term You know, the 200s, the 125s. Angelo and I and Doreen have been on FinCom, so we know from an operating budget what it costs per year. Our problem that we have to address is, it's the number of per years that we have to worry about in the future. So, yes,
With what's coming up and the expenses that we have in these out years for that building, no question, the rubber's gonna hit the road. We're gonna really have to make some really strong decisions about how we're gonna go ahead with this.
I agree 100%. And I think, you know, this is, it almost reflects when the committee was formed, what do you do with the building?
Yeah.
You know, it's,
Well, the other thing it does is the same kind of problem as we were discussing with the library. I'm willing to bet, and I have no knowledge on this, that one of the biggest revenue sources is pickleball. Be done at the community center. So we just moving the pickleball from community center to here? You know, those kinds of things. So I think we have to look even at that. I don't know, I haven't even heard of many activities that they've had there so far. If they're having a meeting there, or they're gonna be having a meeting here, and you're paying for it, it doesn't make any sense. You know, so,
some committee has to decide if this thing is eating too much capital. It's pretty simple. I mean, where do you draw the line? If you're to a point where, you know, you don't want to do it anymore. What does 150 buy you? You know, 150 buys me a policeman, buys me a couple firemen, maybe, I don't know. But the money can be used elsewhere with dwindling revenues. And when to long-term expenses, not you, but when the town decides we want to continue that, it's just, you're going to have to give, there's a point, you have to give something up. There's a point in time where everything's not equal. And we haven't gotten there yet, but we're really close where we have to decide that, you know, I'm not picking a pickleball, but taking it as an example. Any kind of recreation or whatever compared to a safety issue, I don't know. It's up to town meeting, but is to identify and recommend. That's it. Are we done with that one?
Yeah, let's move on.
Let's move on because you gotta get going on it. Okay, so we're finished with that, I think. Yes.
Quick question on fire?
I don't-
Fire department.
Yes.
So, I was trying to remember the life of an ambulance. Is it 3 years, Chris?
They have every other year, they do a replacement on an ambulance. They operate 4, so I guess basically one would last for 8 years.
Okay. No, I was just trying to find room, you know, I mean, with this every other, I mean, we all know that if we get hit by either DHY or the 8 million in wastewater, we're gonna be wiped out. So I just didn't know if there was any room to extend any one of these years in the ambulance to create some room. I hate to play with their plan.
Well, I think
Just
their
saying,
plan
but-
is historic, their plan is justified. This even, you weren't around, but this has been adjusted since Fontaine came up. It's-
No, I was around, I
But
remember.
FinCom, you weren't
It's
here.
safety.
Yep.
And then it's really, and it's one of those
Yeah,
decisions.
okay.
Is it public safety, or my water system's running fine, I don't need wastewater. I mean, you're gonna get that argument too, so.
Okay.
Okay, so we
So the
got
recommendations all match up, Mr. Chairman, so
Right.
I was able to fund the ambulance and the matching funds for the air pack out of free cash.
Okay,
The grant is $380,000 that they anticipate. I believe the way he constructed this, if he doesn't get that grant, then the 200,000 in '22 and the 200,000 in '23 then become operative. If he gets the grant, then those go away. And then the Quint truck, the 1.1, Obviously, with only $1.4 million available in free cash, is insufficient to be able to fund that, so that is recommended as a debt exclusion.
But it's also recommended to be funded.
It is recommended to be funded. You guys voted it, and I concurred and said that the funding source would have to be a debt exclusion.
And I'm going to ask the question, in case it's asked of us, what would happen if we did not get the quint?
I think on the ambulance question and on the quint question, those are kind of better for the chief to answer. From recollection, what he said at the meeting was that he had the pumper that he deferred and he desperately needed, so he's down a piece of equipment. And then the ladder is in the out years, so that was gonna kind of go away. So that's where he got the overall $1 million worth of savings.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and the ladder truck was in very poor condition.
Yeah.
That has to be certified.
Yeah.
Let's go. Okay, so now we go to golf.
All the golf is within their, the golf improvement fund or within the golf budget, so everything is essentially paid for by the golf fees in one way or another. There's two different funds, and then the budget is also basically offset by their fees.
Is there a maximum in the fees, either the improvement fund?
Mm-hmm. They only generate so much each year. They have a cap to how much they can generate.
And they have a plan coming up next week where they're gonna be raising some fees. I can't quote exactly what they are, but they're gonna be making some relatively minor increases, but there are gonna be increases, so the income at the golf course should increase next year.
Does that mean they make more money, or does that mean their expenses have gone up and they
I'm
want,
saying they're gonna have more income.
did their expenses go
The
up?
only expense that has gone up is that on the cart barn project,
Yeah.
the 1.2, that is anticipated to be fully funded by fees. So some of the fees that were put in place were designed to offset that operating cost of funding that debt, which we borrowed that for 20 years?
Do
I
the,
think it was 20 years.
those accounts, do they zero out at the end of the year?
No, they roll over.
And they roll over to a maximum amount, or is there no cap? In other words,
I think there's a maximum on them.
So when the Golf Improvement Fund, if they generate $40,000 and they don't spend it, then if they only spend $30,000, does that $10,000 roll over and decrease the cap for the next year, or is the cap still $40,000 and then it just builds up? Is the question, I think.
is that,
So this is the receipts reserved for appropriation fund, so which requires it to go to town meeting for an annual appropriation. So there's no cap like a revolving fund. Revolving funds have voted caps that go to town meeting every year. This is different. The money is just gonna roll over, just like it does in the PEG Access Fund. That's why you've got over $1 million in there. So the balance would roll over from year to year, and it continue to accrue.
so it never has a cap?
It does not have a cap.
But to expend from it, it has to have
Right,
an
that's correct.
appropriation.
I mean,
that's
the
in budget.
intention is to fund debt and to fund capital projects out of these receipts. There's two of them, receipt reserve for appropriation that the golf fund has.
Only because I understand the golf committee and the golf department are able to manage their funds. And some of the future expenses are,
The three-hole course is a new venture, the three-hole practice and putting on.
They
That's
seem
the-
to have some numbers that will justify that.
And that's
that
the-
it will pay for itself.
okay. I'm questioning that only because of current expenses. And I see that you're trying to improve something, but I would rather improve the course than try to expend.
Okay, I don't want to speak for it, but I think we should get Roman in if you have.
Well,
any
it's under the 50, so I mean, mine is just questioning having it there. Okay. I mean, but again, if they have the revolving or whatever the fund is, and they can spend it any way they want, it's almost like water, correct?
They can't spend it any way they want.
We have to approve it.
So,
Still has to be
it has to
within-
go to town meeting, there has to be an appropriation, and there has to be an explanation at town meeting, they have to ask the question, will you allow this to be appropriated? So it's anything they want. And what they've historically funded, any projects or debt, it's projects or debt with these receipts reserved for appropriation. It's not operating costs. So if they want to make improvements to a particular T or a green, they may come to town meeting and ask for approval. Come to you as well and put it in your capital plan. But as far as the debt is concerned, that went to town meeting on an article to vote to increase fees, capital fees, or,
But if it's coming out of a fund, do they have
So-
to make an article of it?
so at
To expend
annual
on
town
it.
meeting, the article this year's budget, Article 4, ad nauseam, that motion, right? It's so long. And part of it says, and to fund from Golf Improvement Fund, $139,000, and to fund from PEG Access, $168,000, and so on, from all these different funds. That's the appropriation to fund the debt.
Okay, it's coming out of there.
Yeah.
Gotcha, okay. Harbor Master, we're in good shape,
I have a question.
I have a question on that one.
sure.
The $2 million in '22, next year, I understand it's for planning purposes only. With what we're looking at, I would like us to move that a little further out than next year.
Well, I
We
mean,
we don't have a number, I understand.
I think John put that number there,
He did.
and we can't move it. I don't think we can move it. It's his request. If it comes up next year and it's in the current year, then we can, because we're voting on the whole thing, and I understand that, but I wouldn't want to make the move without the harbor master.
Okay,
I agree. I think he actually is going for the Board of Selectmen on Monday night for the 57,000 that was approved in May to do the feasibility and the permitting. And just Saquotucket Harbor, I mean, it's amazing that I think forward, sorry, that depending upon what he gets out of that 57,000.
okay.
Placeholder. There's a gentleman that used to use that. That was his nickname.
Well, the harbors have been pretty good at paying for most of their own costs.
Yes.
Or all of their own costs.
Yeah.
So this is not money that's an.
It's also a revenue producer, which,
Well, you produce revenue to pay your debt.
yeah. Okay, we good?
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this question might be a little off the wall, but the next two items after that, the Round Cove bulkhead, and first, let me talk about the Herring River ramp replacement. Is it crazy to start to think about the Herring River ramp replacement, that it might be covered under CPC parameters? And I would even extend that question to the Round Cove bulkhead replacement.
Under recreation?
Well, I mean, I'm making it up, but until some town makes it up and submits it, otherwise we wouldn't have had Hinkley Pond or any of the other ponds or anything else. It's a recreational function. We have CPC money, and it's not something pressing this year, so I'm just wondering if it's something that somebody could write a letter, or the CPC committee could, when they're in Boston, ask the question, or just start to think of other, because we're so up against it with wastewater. I mean, I find the Herring River ramp replacement probably a little more believable than the bulkhead, but just a
I
comment.
think it's creative. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say no.
Of the two, I think the Round Cove ramp is more urgent. It is an absolute disaster, and it's been on the list for about 10 years.
Well, just on Round Cove, the ramp itself has already been funded. He's just,
The bulkhead around it.
Yeah, this is the bulkhead, so the ramp is in
Okay.
process. I guess when they went to find, is it chapter 91 license, there was none because it's so old. So they had to do an initial license, that's what kind of delayed the improvements.
I understand the old harbor master just did it on his own.
Okay. Why don't we
Round
take,
Cove is the only natural occurring harbor in town. All the others were
where is
man-made.
it?
Round Cove.
Oh, that's right.
Above Pleasant Bay.
Pleasant
That's
Bay.
right, interesting.
Oh, that way. I never think of
Just
Round Cove, no.
Useless
Yeah, I know.
information.
It's in your neighborhood.
No, but it's Round Cove on the undeveloped side. Round Cove is paved going
But
towards
Round Cove-
Chatham.
Is over on
The
Riders.
boat ramp is, what's the road that goes down there, isn't that?
Cove Landing Road.
Cove
yeah.
Landing.
Okay, it's a bus trip.
It's near Wequasit,
Right.
Never been there.
off
Stop
of that
for- we
section
could
of
stop
Route
for lunch
28
on
in
the-
East
But Round
Harwich.
Cove Road doesn't go there.
No.
No,
But it's
no,
called,
the other north,
yeah,
it's
that's,
the end of Pleasant Bay Road, basically.
Thank you, that's,
Yeah.
we've been there.
Right, yes.
We have, it's been on the bus tour.
it's next to Wequasit.
Yes, but it's Pleasant Bay and the,
I said Pleasant Bay, Round
Right.
Cove.
And Cove
Pleasant-
Landing
But
Road.
Round
It's
Cove,
Landing Road.
but
and
Round Cove ends on Pleasant Bay.
Yeah.
Right, by you, yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
I
Okay.
know it intimately.
yes.
So, my other comment on the harbor, and, you know, I know they bring in a lot of revenue, Angelo, and right now, we need help from those departments that are able to bring in a lot of revenue for our departments that need money.
Can't
But-
do that.
But when we, could we get a better understanding, not today, not tomorrow? I remember when we said, with Saquotucket Harbor, when we said to do the bulkhead right now. I remember saying that, I remember hearing it, and it was a relief at the time on the expense. But unfortunately, now we're here and, you know, we don't have a lot of money. So I just didn't know if at some point we could have a discussion on the Saquotucket Harbor bulkhead and its condition.
Yeah, I do recall, just as from memory, is that John and I, when that question came up, when he was doing the work, that the engineers thought that you could get 5 to 10 years of useful life out of it. So
Right.
they thought, instead of jacking up the cost now to replace something, that why not get that useful life?
Right.
It is out in '27
It's in
that the
27.
big dollars come, but that was, I know, part of the rationale, but certainly John can speak to it better than I.
I'm just writing down, and I'll get to the end, we'll go through that, but we're good right now, correct? Okay. That's Harbor Master, Libraries, nothing. Natural Resources, we're good. Planning, we're good.
Police is
Police,
just the tasers.
tasers. Okay, free cash.
Public Works?
Page
Yeah, let me
3.
flip the page.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We got the bigger version.
Oh, okay.
Okay, five-year maintenance plan. Vote on.
Where are you now?
On top of page 3.
Public Works.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
Did you,
we thought this wasn't gonna happen.
yeah, maybe you did vote it.
I got it that we voted it.
Yeah, we
That may have
voted,
been,
Okay, so it's not
that's a
here.
Scrivener's error on my part.
Okay,
I got it
Sorry about that.
that we voted
we
it,
voted both
of them.
pieces.
okay,
both of them.
okay, it doesn't appear here, okay.
I gotta fix that.
Okay, so then we drop down to the dump truck.
Yeah, just in terms of the amount of money available, I had kind of lengthy discussions with Lincoln, and I said, I only have about 250,000 that can put towards this, so I couldn't afford, at least in the budgetary, the 6 dump truck. He has the Ford E250 and then the catch basin cleaner. So he recommended, he said the catch basin cleaner was more of a dire need, and then the Ford van. He actually took me down there today to look at all 3 pieces of equipment. I do kind of agree with him that the six-wheel dump truck is not used extensively, so that probably could be delayed. But it should be replaced at some point. So because of the lack of available funds for free cash, I couldn't afford to fund all three of those items.
Okay, so we
So-
know, I'm sorry, yes?
So should we reconsider and eliminate our vote on that one right now?
No, our vote is that what we voted,
But if you want to match up with
yeah,
the administrator's column.
go ahead. No,
Oh.
make your,
Okay, move to reconsider the vote to approve $175,000 for a six-wheel dump truck in FY '21.
Second,
all those in favor?
Aye,
aye.
Opposed? Okay,
and so we're not going to approve it, so no motion.
no motion.
Well, I'm trying to think, we just said we'd reconsider the vote, but we didn't really take an action,
Yeah, so
so,
We just need to move it.
yeah. So, move to, move the projected.
Well, now that we have the information, we could, this is the recommendation, we're voting on, we can vote no.
So vote not to fund it.
Right.
I think the point was that you reconsidered the 175. Now the motion should be to not fund it.
Right.
I'll make a motion that we do not fund the six-wheel dump truck
All those in,
for
Second.
$175,000.
second? Noreen? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm opposed.
You're opposed? Okay. Okay, so
There you go.
we're gonna go with the,
One other question.
go ahead.
So, I know we've been carrying the roundabout for a few years, and there's been some small, accommodations, and they've helped. I don't really know the status beyond that. But are we carrying this number? Is it a real plan for next year?
Actually, that's a great question. I have not followed up with Lincoln recently. He had initially thought to take that off. The concern was that we did do some sight distance improvements, cut back and move some fencing. The number of accidents hasn't,
Right.
no, it hasn't gone down as appreciably as we had thought. And it was because of some of that feedback that I got from police and from W that I probably have gone down because we improved the sight distance, but it's far from being able to call it safe.
Wow.
I want to make a couple comments. I go through that intersection a couple of times a day, and it's absolutely scary. I don't keep records, but there's at least one accident a month, average one. And when they have them, they're beauties. And I think the long-term fix, I'm not saying this year or next year, would put the roundabout in, because it's gotta be the worst intersection in town for accidents.
It was for, I think, vehicle damage, it was in the top 10, and that was probably 5 years ago, I
This
don't
is
know.
Pleasant Bay and 39.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's gonna get worse.
with the flashing stop signs.
Yeah, it's gonna get worse because now the traffic's diverted.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so the,
During the
because-
sewer project, yeah.
during that 137 diverts there, and people don't want to go down to Bay, so they stay on Pleasant Bay, and there's more traffic now. And then when 137 comes up, people are now avoiding, come down Pleasant Bay, now they come through Round Cove, so there's double the traffic coming in.
Right.
And now, could be a 15-car wait to get through there, and people are just afraid to.
I
go
agree,
through.
I agree. It's,
But I think it needs to be really re-looked at again, because I was thinking that if the data was really good, that we would take it off, but I don't recall getting.
If
a
we need
definitive-
it, I'm all for it. I just
Yeah.
hadn't heard anything.
done
So,
as
and-
much as he can as far as sight line, the blinking stoplights, and he's put the road liners on the street, so you have to narrow. And they put, I think it drops from 40 to 30 miles an hour at that intersection.
Well, the other point, too, I mean, this is not on here, but when you're going towards Chatham,
Yeah.
down Pleasant Bay,
Yeah.
and you hit the stop sign, the line of where, the stop line is like 10 feet in back
Of the stop sign.
of the stop sign.
I know.
So what you do is you go beyond the stop line, and so your bumper is in the line of traffic. I mean, it's really stupid. Why don't you put a stoplight?
For some reason, they couldn't
The
put a
neighbors
stop.
didn't want the red flashing light.
Yeah,
A
look.
roundabout is the answer.
Oh, the neighbors are gonna love that too. Anyway, okay, so,
And it does fit. We did have that study. The roundabout fits within the
Yeah.
profile of the road.
and those property values are gonna go up. Okay, so we have everything there, youth, the memorial fence, everything CPC.
That's all CPC.
I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
It's my last question, too.
Don't believe that, come on.
So in one of the out years, I see the Cahoon Beach restroom, and I would just say, I mean, we don't have to deal with it now, but I love Cahoon Beach, it's near my house, love to sit there at the bench. I don't think it needs a restroom. I mean, a porta potty should be fine. I mean, I don't know if we need restroom. I can remember 10 years ago, we were excited to be like replacing the one at Pleasant River. We've gone from there to having them, you know, every place somebody throws a towel on
Yeah.
the sand, you know, so, I mean, that's just my opinion, but I think we should stop it now before it becomes a.
Well, I don't know if it's ADA approved and everything else. That's what the moving, I mean, that's what we hear every time we hear
Right,
that.
well,
Now, the second thing is,
but no,
we,
go ahead, sorry.
the second thing is, we voted 106,400, and the number's 112.
Oh, yeah. I'm
Where?
sorry. You know what, when I looked at his CPC application, it was the 112.
Okay. Can
I
I hear
think
a
he may
motion?
have
I'd like to
submitted
make
it.
a motion that we reconsider the 16400.
Second,
All those in favor?
What's it for? The
We
amount?
voted 106,400 going to CPC request, and the number is 112.
Okay, I understand.
Does that need a vote, or is that just a Scribner's error and Chris just needs to fix it?
Actually, I don't think this one, I think Eric submitted the capital form as the 106, and when he submitted the CPC application, it was 112.
So we wouldn't have
So-
known that.
I went up to the 112 because I thought the higher number was probably the more accurate number.
So,
I think it
We're voting to
probably makes sense
redo it
to
to
redo it.
112. Go ahead,
so your motion to reconsider,
right?
The 106.
The 106 to make it
400 to
112.
make it up, to provide the updated number of 112.
okay, so move to approve, 112,000 for Brooks Memorial Field fencing, from CPC funds.
Second.
you didn't there
Reconsider
was no
first,
motion to
and then-
reconsider first.
I thought we did.
Yeah, I thought we did.
You,
Do it again.
Do it again.
Do it again.
Go ahead.
Move to reconsider the vote to approve 106,400 from CPC funds for Brooks Memorial Field fencing.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Move to approve,
wait a minute, you vote no?
No, I'll vote yes, it's all right. Sorry.
I just gotta
Yeah,
get
no,
these
no,
right.
good.
He's just thinking of other things.
move to approve 112,000 for Brooks Memorial Field fencing from CPC funds for FY '21.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Angelo?
Aye, I'm sorry.
Town clerk.
Okay. So we're done with that. The town clerk, everything's under 50. Wastewater, who knows?
Yeah, wastewater, there's a presentation on Monday. I think Dave Young just sent material today, as a matter of fact, to have a discussion on it, so.
This is one of those that's going to go in blank on our vote, and before town meeting, we have to get together.
They may go in blank on my column, too.
Right.
Well,
Until we have,
better get it right.
till we get a
Yeah,
better sense for it.
Better handle on it.
Yep.
Okay. Water,
They said the new source exploration, which. you
We
talked about
voted
that, too.
on that.
Oh, you did vote that?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
I don't know why I
Yeah.
didn't put that. You know, I do these things and I get interrupted about 4 or 5 times, and sometimes I forget it where I.
That's okay. That's okay. Nothing from, okay, the bottom is other stuff.
Bottom are
CPC.
just kind of the miscellaneous from CPC.
Okay, so that's it.
Just for curiosity, if people are interested, because I took a little bit of time in the page 4. The one thing on the tax impact, that's the old chart, so I need to get Carol to update that. The capital department is still good, and the capital funding by source. But just the, you could see on the free cash, on the 1.4, it ended up about 866 is what was funded. Snow and ice normally is at 500. I told Lincoln he can't have it snow, so down to 400. The cultural center subsidy, I was trying to shift that down because it had been generating revenue. And we have historically funded Chamber of Commerce, library, cultural center. I have a little bit in there for other small capital. We generally use some. And then on the prior year bill, a little bit, so you can see how that's allocated. On community preservation, and we had a meeting earlier today in which there may be a request that I didn't capture, or the secretary for CPC didn't provide to me, but there's about $3 million available to CPC in terms of the revenue.
Is that ramp?
And you can see the requests for recreation and undesignated at 1.6. Open space is at 1.45. I think the lion's share of that is Deacon's Hall. And then historic, 109. So historic, if they funded every single thing in historic, they have 489,000. So they could fund everything and still have 300,000 left. And then on housing, the amount of funding is 75, and the request is 557. In the housing one, I think that someone brought up at the meeting at the trust today that they had asked for 200,000, and it didn't make the list.
We talked about it, I don't know if it has been reflected. Deacon's Folly,
You did not vote Deacon's
We
Folly.
voted it no.
we voted it no.
Right. This one is, the way I have this broken out is just available funds, these are the total of the requests, and then that last box is what CPC actually votes.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
The real, I don't want to tie anything up, but for CPC, when it ends, or could end in whatever it is, 3, 4, or 5 years, so what will happen to the balances in those buckets? Isn't our obligation, if we wanted to end it, doesn't that come up in about 5 years?
Yeah, there's two things. I don't think it comes up. I think you can cancel it. I think now there's enough time. The reason why the town wouldn't want to consider canceling it is because we have the land bank
I
grant.
understand that, yeah,
And that last funding, I think, is in '24.
right.
So, I mean, I would, just as a suggestion, moving forward, that we pay about 500,000 for paying off land bank.
Right.
What other towns are doing, the town of Sandwich has already done this, I think Yarmouth is considering it, Dennis is considering it, to decrease the amount that CPC receives, let's say from 3% down to 2%, just as a, for instance,
Right,
and then put 1% towards wastewater.
right, but
So there is a possibility of
my
considering.
real question is, in 2024, after the land bank ends, there's money assigned to recreation.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't answer
Yeah.
your question fully. If there's leftover balances, say there's leftover balances, and then take that and then allow people to expend. Or there may be something in the statute, I'm just not that familiar with the element of the statute, that if you do close it out, there are other times, like a revolving fund,
Right,
that if you don't fully expend it, then it could fall to free cash.
yeah,
So maybe there's a
Yeah, okay.
chance. That part I'm not as sure on. That's a John Giorgio question.
and just to let you know, I was keeping like a running tab while we were going through that, but I won't say this is accurate, but your free cash now is only off by about 20 grand, but I'll wait for you to go through it and see. When we started, it was over 100. We knocked a couple
Oh,
off. The 70,000, the 11,605, and a couple of
but
others.
my, and no offense, but I total it on my column. I don't total it on your column.
Wow.
Part of the reason why I don't total it on your column, because you guys don't do the 50,000. I have to fund the 50,000,
Okay,
below
Alright.
If you-
50,000.
If you ever want to check her,
yeah.
Yeah.
she's part-time. Okay, we will not have to meet again, I don't think.
Before you say that, I had brought up, I think at the last meeting that I attended, that we were trying to have.
Yeah,
you wanna
that's
pass
what I'm going
those?
to talk about, yeah.
Okay, you have that on there? I just, as a reminder to folks, Carol's gonna do a overview of, did you get one? Of how municipal finance works. Larry Ballantyne had asked for
So
something
it's
to be done.
across the street,
Yeah, it's the 29th, which I think is
And
next
lunch will-
Tuesday at 6.
dinner will be served, so that's good. I was just going to talk,
I'd write that down right now.
shit, if I had Angelo's money, I'd burn mine. So 1029, and that's what I was marked on. It's the three, FinCom, the BOS, and the COC.
Is somebody doing meeting minutes for those? Because I can't be there.
Yeah, I think where it's a selectmen's meetings, you could probably just piggyback on the
Good, because
selectmen.
I have a meeting.
This is a Tuesday?
Yeah,
It's
it's
Tuesday.
probably just gonna be a presentation and then questions and answers. So Carol, if people went to the one that she did over at the library, it's gonna be,
And where's that
Similar
meeting
to
being held?
The,
Brooks Free Library, Thornton Room.
That's the basement, right?
well,
yeah, just give her one, says she has it for the minutes. Sorry, I should have.
Okay, so that's what I was going to, now, since that will probably be, I think, the end, I think, do you have that list of things we have to do?
Yeah. Well, that budget meeting, did I just see a notation on the
There is another budget meeting in which,
11/4?
on 11/4, that there was supposed to be on
10/21.
10/21,
Is this the-
several items.
I went 10/21.
I saw you
And they-
there on the TV.
Yeah,
A
We
memo
laughed
went
at
out, a memo, you didn't have to go.
I missed it.
Okay, I figured.
Okay, so supposedly on 10/28, the Board of Selectmen will review the capital plan, and that's with Chris.
Yep.
We don't.
yeah, so I'm gonna just do what we just did tonight.
I mean, if you want to go, we'll be, it's 10/28.
Wanna go.
And on December the 9th,
We'll
I don't
do-
know what the review is versus
The
submit.
21st one, October 21st, got moved to November 4th.
Right, so that's the one.
21st didn't occur.
It's a
Larry
joint
Larry asked
meeting.
to have it delayed.
So there's a
So 28th, 4th?
Yeah, so the 21st, the
Didn't
item on the
happen.
budget calendar, the 21st, is now been moved to November 4th,
Okay,
which is really just the schools, the overview of the schools.
okay,
what
we
they-
don't have to be, okay.
But it is a joint meeting.
It is a joint meeting, so
Right.
if you guys want to find, the schools do normally reference their enrollment and some of their reference to capital.
Okay,
I have a question.
sure.
What's the thinking on the selectmen side for that 8,400,000 for number two, the extra money they need?
Contract 3.
Yeah.
Why don't you watch Monday night and then we'll all find out together.
I mean,
I'm not really sure, but I think that there may be a
CPC.
motion to delay that.
Okay. I want to get this calendar straight so we find out. So the 21st, then before the 4th, there, on the calendar says October 28th, BOS, review capital plan and set priorities.
That's not us.
So I'm gonna provide what we did tonight to them on Monday night, just an overview.
Okay, but then again, on the, of December, you submit the 7-year capital plan.
Yes.
Are we at that one?
No? To
No,
join,
You present, and then you present, and then I.
I thought that
back
was
you up.
January, when you're both there.
There's two.
There's two, one in
Right, I
December,
know.
one
it
in
doesn't
January.
say anything about here, the January 6th, the Capital Outlay Committee held joint public hearing.
Okay, the joint public.
That's January 6th. January 6th.
So January 6th, we
It's a
would
public hearing.
go
Just make
there.
sure we get agendas. That's all we need.
I mean, we accelerated this year because the board wanted
Okay,
all this
so
information early.
December 9th was a no for us,
That you
Jan-
submit
right,
to
Well,
the
you could be there if you
Board of
want.
Selectmen
Right,
and the
yeah.
FinCom.
but January 6th was a come if you can,
Yeah, anything that's a joint meeting, obviously,
okay?
But January is a joint meeting, is a joint public hearing.
joint
All
public
right.
hearing.
Okay, and the 9th is TA submits.
Not gonna be much changes to it.
No, to BOS. And FinCom, so that's 12/9. You got 11/4, but that's with the schools, so you don't have to be there. 12/9 is that Chris submits to the Board of Selectmen and FinCom. If you want to be there, fine. 1/6 is the joint public meeting,
Is it a public meeting or public hearing?
a hearing.
Yeah, the January one is the
Hearing.
public hearing.
Hearing, okay. So, we have nothing to do except, I will pick a date on a downtime, probably March or April. And we need further discussions regarding the cultural center.
Yep.
The harbors and wastewater. Anything else you want to address prior to town meeting?
Just a question. One of the things I was looking at is the fire trucks that we've moved to be on the ballot and have to be voted for. It strikes me that's an important piece of equipment, and I was wondering if there's a way that we can pay for that with some form. And I can't figure it out looking at what's on here, but I think we should be alert to any opening,
Yeah,
because that
just
strikes me as being an important thing.
Just to that, you know, I try to be helpful to provide different options, but a couple things that have kind of surfaced. The money that we had used for the tornado cleanup, we did not get the amount for FEMA purposes. But, you know, having the legislative delegation come down, having the Speaker of the House come down, you know, yielded some benefits. And Sarah Peak was able to get approved as part of a supplemental budget at the state level. It was I think it was $3.4 million, which I believe our allocation of that would be about 1.2. We were the hardest hit community and we asked for a fair amount. So if we get reimbursed for that, one of the things that I was anticipating, if we did not get any reimbursement, then we would have to tap into the stabilization fund to pay for, I mean, that's kind of what you have a stabilization fund for, is to survive a tornado or an unusual event. But, you know, if the community wanted to, I mean, there is money in stabilization. You know, it does, in the long run, probably harms us to pay for a fire truck out of that, because then we would decrease the amount of reserves for the AAA. But I think the stabilization fund is close to $3 million. One of the things that I kind of say that we do have, OPEB is funded, OPEB is health insurance, we can't really tie that to fire truck, obviously, but, you know, that fund was at $300,000 6 years ago, and now it's at $3 million. So, you know, the town has made a pretty good concerted effort to improve its financial reserve position, hence the AAA.
We don't want to lose the AAA.
I know, the question came up. I mean, there is money to do something. If I was, you know, well, I won't say it. If I was allowed to do it, I wanted to do it, continue to have, you know, free cash be in the $2 to $3 million range, then we could have probably paid for the Quint too, but.
Anything else?
FinCom tonight,
6:30.
6:30.
He's happy.
I have
So-
a candy bar.
Chris had desire to have us vote on the plan as a whole today. I mean, personally, I think it's early yet. with all the changes that are gonna happen and the new rule about us having to vote on the plan as changed, you know, I mean, I'm just reminding you of what you
Yeah,
said,
I did not
so-
get a chance to go in
Right, that's
and
fine.
match up
Yeah.
from last year. I have a feeling that 70% of it's gonna be changed
I
from
do
last
too.
year.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether it makes sense to go through all of them, or just say that if it was a unanimous vote, that we vote the plan, maybe with exceptions if people are concerned about specific out-year items.
You
I
know,
don't know, I just,
can I just throw one out just to think about? Since it hasn't hit the ballot yet, I mean,
technically, we don't have to comply
you
with
could
it
say,
next year.
this year, this is the first year, this is the plan, and these will be us. I'm not saying I would recommend that, I'm just,
Well, I think that makes good sense. Would it be helpful if we, as a group who gets impacted by this, would vote that we don't do it for a year?
I think you probably could say that you agree that once it becomes fully operational, the ballot is passed, that you enforce it.
right.
And that's more of a positive way to say that.
could
It's-
frame-
However you want to say it.
Yeah, we could frame a motion, but, I mean, I don't think it's in the shape to do that yet anyway, but in a few months, we could frame a motion that said, we are voting for the plan as, you know, displayed now, dated this, and this will be the foundation of the new system, should that ballot pass in May of 2020 or something. Just a thought to say.
Why don't you put it on your calendar to bring it up
I will.
when we do, you know, like this, the review with the harbor master at that,
Yeah.
at that meeting.
Let's put it on the agenda.
Yeah, we'll have it on the agenda, and perhaps Chris will have some updates by then.
I mean,
It's something that doesn't need to be done today.
no,
And
doesn't have
Chris
to be
needs
done
to get
today.
this, you know,
Right, yeah, no, and it's just that it seems like with, everything is in flux, there's so many things changing, I'm not trying to duck work, but it just seems for us to escape, I mean, this committee didn't even know this was going on, so, might be a better starting point.
yes.
Well, the other thing we should do is, I know we think, when we've talked about it before, we saw a lot of difficulties with it. Does it make any sense for this group to bring it up at town meeting, that perhaps you shouldn't vote for it? The voting is after town meeting, isn't it?
Yeah,
Voting's after town meeting. The one thing that you have to be very careful of is that public officials, you can't spend any public money to advocate for a ballot question one way or another.
I wouldn't be inclined to support that, because it already passed town meeting. I
Okay.
mean, that's just me, but,
Well, we bring things up to
It's a little bit of a sticky
I mean,
wicket.
I'd love to make it from 7 years to 5 years, but even that would be so much work, you know, it's like another ballot, and
So, just the March or April meeting, wastewater, harbor, and who else?
Wastewater, harbor,
cultural center.
cultural center,
Cultures.
and potential vote changes in the plan. Vote for potential changes in plan.
Right, to identify, to be
Long-
consistent with last year,
Right.
or decide to delay pending ballot
Right.
question.
You got that?
I think I got it.
Yeah, it's just.
I'll
Yes,
be
sir.
back for FinCom.
There'll be critics no matter what we do, so.
They're shorthanded there, too.
Yeah, I found a board secretary for FinCom, finally. You know the tall guy that, we're done, right? Should I make a motion?
Oh, you need to adjourn.
I make a motion we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The
There you are.